I had a lot of trepidation about this conference and about my speaking. I had even a brief moment of hope that the war would cancel it, because I wasn't sure what it would be like to talk to a group of people while robot bombs are falling on our enemies around the clock. I just couldn't picture that. So normally I just sort of take flight and whatever's on my mind gets splattered onto your mind. But I don't feel so certain of myself in this situation. I'm not sure that just taking flight for another evocation of the psychedelically aided evolution and transformation of our species is the way to go. Because I think maybe we should, or I should, attempt something that's a little rare for me, plain talk about what's going on. Yesterday, Bob Wilson got up and talked about the war, and then Tim cheered him on and put his stamp of approval on that. I thought it was great. And then we broke, and somebody cornered me for an interview, and they said, "What's with these guys dragging politics into this thing? This is not a political meeting." I didn't say anything. I just tried to assimilate that. And then last night I thought about it, and I've been thinking about it, about this war, about the 60s, about Vietnam, about how LSD played a major role in stopping that war by forcing people to confront what they were really doing, by empowering people to get together in large groups and say, "We won't stand for it. We won't put up with it." And even though the war is now 2 weeks old, whatever it is, for the first time, really last night, I got why it feels so bad to me personally, and by extension, I think, to all of you. Aside from all the horrors of war, which you have had rehearsed for you over the past 2 weeks, what really is a pisser about this is that it means for people my age and older, they didn't hear us. We weren't heard. When they were bombing Libya, we could just call that an aberration. When they were hunting down Noriega, we could just call that a large dope bust. This is none of those things. This is war. And what we said, if you can take the psychedelic and political struggles of the 1960s and boil it down into one phrase, what did we stand for? We stood for making love, not war. And ever since the Marines were shoved into the sea at Da Nang and the CIA was helicoptered off the embassy roof in Saigon, we've been able to hold a delicate and very tense balance between the view of the dominator, weapon-worshipping, old-style macho approach to things, and our own. And I think we all felt, I certainly did, last August when they began to move the chess pieces around, that we would not stand for it, that there was a we, and that we would not stand for it. And if you were able to keep your idealism intact until the congressional debate, when you felt then they represent us, they will stop it. After all, it's the opposition party to the administration. It's an anti-war party. They will stop it. And they went like sheep to the slaughter. To the slaughter. And they voted for it. So now we have no excuse. No faction was overridden. Nobody's rights were trampled on the path to this debacle. We, the people of the United States, by some staggering percentage, approve of this. Well, so that's to people like myself and Tim Leary and Bob Wilson and John Lilly and all the people who aren't here and all of you that I've grown up with and worked with, this is an abomination. We stand for consciousness expansion. Do you know how much you have to have for brains to wage war? It staggers the imagination. We stood for deconditioning, asking questions, resisting authority. Today, no questions are being asked. Authority is not being resisted. Oh yes, there are demonstrations against the war, but in a democracy they have what's called a 5% rule. It doesn't matter if only 5% are involved in it. It doesn't matter what it is. So we have been effectively isolated. Our names have been metaphorically signed to the bottom line of these documents that commit us to war. How do you feel about that? We don't know where we're going. We really don't see light at the end of the tunnel. This is the surrender issue. It's going to get crazier. The craziness is intensifying and intensifying. And yet, we possess creativity on a scale undreamed of. We can find a way out. There's no problem. We have the technologies, the money, the resources. We have everything we need except the will. It's a mental quality lacking in us. The will to do it. The will to undertake planetary-sized projects. The will to make a plan that has a 20-year, a 50-year, and a 500-year benchmark. But we are going to have to very quickly cease our infantilism. We need to eliminate the unconscious mind. This is really what it comes down to, folks. We cannot, in an era of 30-minute delivery of thermonuclear weapons from anywhere to anywhere, we do not have the luxury of carrying around with us an enraged bull primate. We cannot afford the luxury of the unconscious, the hidden motive, the unexamined drive, the misunderstood acquisition. We are coming now through a very narrow historical neck where the accumulated stupidity of the last 5,000 years, the dues now have to be paid. It ain't fair. We didn't do it. We didn't bring the slaves from Africa. We didn't invent oligarchy. We didn't do all these things. Nobody's interested in our whining about how we didn't do it. It's in your face. And it's clearly a crisis of two things, of consciousness and of conditioning. These are the two things that the psychedelics attack. We have the technological power, the engineering skills to save our planet, to cure disease, to feed the hungry, to end war, but we lack the intellectual vision, the ability to change our minds. We must decondition ourselves from 10,000 years of bad behavior. And it's not easy. I mean, imagine, I don't know how many of you have ever confronted the fact that you were addicted to something. And some addictions are really serious. If you've ever been addicted to tobacco or heroin, I'm sure you know what I mean. Well, then imagine a global population addicted to a drug the use of which is killing us, but we can't, there's no doctor saying you should. There's no rehab clinic to go to when you're a species. We are on an absolutely destructive bender that will end with the death of the earth, the impoverishment of its animal and plant population, and the collapse of our civilization into scarcity unless we can somehow restructure our psychology and get hold of ourselves. And psychedelics are the only thing I've ever seen work on an individual level to do that. I can't believe how constipated American institutions are. I mean, here we are under the aegis of a great crusading reformer from Arkansas. A new order in human affairs has dawned, but they suggest closing an air base out at Sacramento, and there are editorials as to whether we can survive the shock of this massive change. Well, I've got news for you. You better do your change-related calisthenics if that was heavy lifting, because what you've got coming at you is something very, very different. We are now in a position to actually make something of ourselves, extend the design process to human destiny, and produce something that will redeem 10,000 years of pogroms and migrations and attempted genocides and pointless wars and stupid religions that make people hate themselves and all the rest of it. If we're going to redeem that legacy, then we have to do something quite spectacular.